This video is brought to you by Skillshare.
So I realize that you may not know this, but when I'm not talking about Broadway musicals, I'm actually this really huge fan of monster movies. And while my boy King Kong obviously has a special place in my heart, there's also another section that's reserved to giant sharks. Mainly one.
My name is Steve Spielberg, and I just directed a movie called Jaws.
The only thing about a shark, he's got lifeless eyes, black eyes, like a doll's eyes.
Now, the only thing probably more interesting than the actual movie Jaws is the behind-the-scenes just chaos of trying to make this movie a thing. So when I saw that a play about the making of Jaws was coming to Broadway, understandably, I was super stoked. So did The Shark is Broken blow me away like a shark with a scuba tank in its mouth? Or did it leave me sinking like a drunk teen skinny dipping at midnight in the waters of Amity Island? We need to talk about The Shark is Broken.
So unless you're Steven Spielberg and have been making movies since you were born, it can be a pretty intimidating craft to learn. What gear do you use? How do you set up a shot? What do you do if your mechanical shark sinks?
Thankfully, with hundreds of classes on a wide variety of topics, including filmmaking, photography, graphic design, and even music, Skillshare has all the answers.
I followed Jordy Vandeput's YouTube filmmaking channel for a while, and just about lost it when I saw he had a class on Skillshare. This is the perfect class whether you want to just learn the basics of film, or if you're ready to start your own creative business. So do you want to unlock your creativity and learn something new? Well, now, the first 1,000 of my viewers to sign up using my code will get a 1-month trial of Skillshare for free. So head to the link in my description and chomp down on some grade A knowledge.
So I finally got around to seeing The Shark is Broken a couple weeks ago with YouTuber Howard Ho, who won the lottery, had an extra ticket, and said, do you want to come with me to this thing? And, you know, I've been seeing the clips everywhere. I've been seeing the press photos at the Tony Awards. They played a promo package. And it's like I said at the beginning of this video, I am a huge fan of Jaws. So of course it was a no-brainer going into it. So what the play is about is it's about the 3 lead actors for Jaws, and it follows them during the production hell that this movie was. And if you don't know the backstory of Jaws, I highly recommend that you go and you learn all about it, because this thing was a mess. It was Steven Spielberg's first ever feature film, like very big studio film. And, you know, usually what you would do as a director is you would just, you know, use a studio backlot and fill it up with some tanks and film your boat scenes on that. But for Spielberg, it didn't give him that feeling of visceral fear and like vastness that he wanted of what the seas actually looked like. So he decided, we're going to actually film this thing on the open seas. And while that absolutely did add something to the film, it also meant, like, technically behind the scenes, things were getting a lot more complex, specifically with the giant robot shark that they'd made named Bruce. Every time they used this puppet in the ocean, it took on water and it absorbed more water. So it got heavier and heavier and ultimately led to the shark breaking down more and more. So this is where the play really takes place, is in between one of those many technical difficulties. And it follows the 3 lead actors of the movie. But basically how this show came about is that Robert Shaw's son, Ian Shaw, he's an actor himself. And his father passed away when he was 8. For a period of time, it seemed like he was kind of running away from his father's legacy. But his father's legacy kept finding him in just really weird, different ways. He was at the same age that his father was when he played Quint in the movie Jaws. And he was doing this other film, and he was shaving with just his mustache, and he looked in the mirror and he realized, oh my God, I look just like Quint from the movie. And then there was also another weird comparison where he was playing this pilot who was dropping the Hiroshima bomb. His father, Quint, in Jaws, was involved in this shark attack that came from his vessel, his boat, bringing the Hiroshima bomb across the Pacific. So he said in an interview, I think it was with Rolling Stone, where he was saying he had this weird moment of like, my dad played the man who brought the bomb over, and then all these years later, I'm playing the guy who dropped the bomb. So it was just a bunch of weird similarities like that, and that wanting to deal with his father's legacy, but then also his demons, that he started thinking about writing this play about the behind the scenes goings on of Jaws. But understandably, it's that thing of like, it's a very vulnerable piece, but then you're also like, who are you to think that you can pretend to be your father, who is this great legendary actor? And so out of fear of, coming off as like a prick, he basically put it to the side. But then he brought it up to friends, he brought it up to his wife, and through all of that, they all said it's a great idea, and he decided to pursue it. So it went to, I don't exactly know the timeline, but it started at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, like a very small production at Edinburgh Fringe. And then from there, it transferred to a bunch of other different productions. There was one very popular one in the West End, but then they also did a Toronto run. And then eventually it's made it here to Broadway. So now that you know a little bit of the history that is very important to this review, let's dive into the good, the mid, and the bad. Starting with the merchandise. Now, this is either hit or miss with Broadway shows. And with this one, I was actually pretty impressed with the merchandise they had. They were just, those unique and interesting items that are specifically made for the show, And the things that I walked away with were this pen, which says the shark is broken on it, and it's got a little cap that looks like a tail that I really love. But when I sat down with Howard, I was realizing that this definitely is not a great white shark. So a couple points off because it's not accurate to the film or the book. But it's definitely a tiger shark, which I guess in some ways actually is still relevant because tiger sharks are mentioned in the film. But it's a really fun pen that is sitting on my desk as of now. And then the next fun thing, I posted about this on Twitter of how excited I was, but it's this magnet, which, looking at it at first, it just looks like your traditional run-of-the-mill magnet. But then you look at that and it looks like a shark bit it. It's just little things, people. But so that was all fine and good. Props to the person who sold me this and told me that it was like $80. I don't know if I'm more concerned that he made that joke or more concerned that I absolutely believed it. So then another thing that I really loved was the design of the show. The set was very, it's simple, but deceptively so in the way that it does what it needs to do, but it just goes a little step above because it's one set the entire way through. It's the boat, which they cut in half so you can see it inside. And that's where all the action takes place. But then on the back, it's this giant LED screen. It's kind of like what they do in The Mandalorian, where you have the background screen, but then you put the video on it, which is just nice because it adds some real natural lighting to it. It makes the actors look like they're actually in that environment. But then they took it one step further again, and occasionally a tide would come by or whatever, or when someone would get on the boat would tip and you'd hear the sounds. The sound design was great in timing this. And it looked like the boat was actually rocking on the water, which was just really fun to see. And I hate to say it, but that's really where my love, like the things that I love, that's where that ends. And really what I walked away from with this show were feelings of mid to things that I didn't really like with this production. And as always, I got to preface this with like, this is my interpretation of it and how I walked away with it, my opinions on it. That is not to discredit anybody who worked on the show, anybody who designed the show, especially anybody who wrote the show, because I think it comes from a very good and a very human, vulnerable place. But with that being said, there were just a couple things that I walked away with thinking that didn't really leave me that satisfied. And the place where that really starts is with the performances. And there's this interesting thing going on with Broadway in the summer right now, where it's like that summer blockbuster for films has kind of translated over to the stage in this weird way where, you've got two Spielberg-esque blockbusters that are on stage right now, just a couple blocks apart. You've got Back to the Future, which Spielberg produced. That was this huge summer blockbuster. And then you've got a play about the Spielberg film that essentially started the whole blockbuster craze in The Shark is Broken. And with those two titles being so widely known and revered for those big moments that we all know, the quotes that we all know, and the characters that we all know, we're at this interesting phase where it's that IP musical thing of adapting it and elevating it, and then the other side of the coin, which is adapting it and imitating it. And this is something that you can really see. It's what I talked about a little bit in the Back to the Future video with the performance between Roger Bart and then Casey Likes, where Roger Bart comes at the role of Doc, and he has a certain little bit of the mannerisms where you recognize that this is the same character, but he adds his own interpretation to it that makes it his own quirks. And then on the other side, you've got Casey Likes, who, yes, he is Marty McFly, but more so it comes off like he's playing Michael J. Fox playing Marty McFly, which now that I think about it, maybe it's not that fair of a comparison between Back to the Future and Shark is Broken, because now that I think about it, they're both dealing with two very different character interpretations. Because on this side, on Back to the Future side, it's characters that are made up, while on the other end, Jaws is Shark is Broken is so confusing because they're playing the characters that we know, but then they're also having to embody the actors who played them. So it's just, which all in all just speaks to the impossible tightrope that the actors are walking. But that being said, we are no stranger to biopics and, bio musicals, bio plays, where you have to, you can't just do an impression. You have to be a real human being. And I think that's what's kind of missing from Shark is Broken, is that I don't feel like they're really the people. And a lot of that comes down to the performances and also the writing in some spots where it doesn't feel like the characters are really objective driven, which we're going to go into acting talk for a little bit. So this is something that we talked a lot about in my training a few years ago, is where if you're playing a character, you have to have some objective that you want to get to. You don't explicitly say it anywhere. You really don't tell other people about it, but you know it subconsciously, and that plays a role in motivating your actions. And with The Shark is Broken, they just never really have that. And a lot of that, it's like I said, performance and script, because a lot of the script, it's just vignettes that don't really connect and don't really build off of each other. So the one that I'm really thinking about, the performance that I'm really thinking about this, and Garton on the Patreon, I asked on the Patreon, what do you want to talk about? And he asked, I have to ask, how was Brightman? How was Alex Brightman in this? And unfortunately for me, as a huge Beetlejuice fan, this really hurt because Brightman he didn't do it for me in this one. And I think it's for the reason of he was just really trying to do an impersonation of Richard Dreyfuss, but also Beetlejuice just ended. It's his first real role since Beetlejuice. So when he came out, there are still very much so cadences of Beetlejuice in his voice. So it was like Beetlejuice plays Richard Dreyfuss. And it didn't really work for me. But the performance that I really want to focus on, and this is going to lead into the rest of the whole conversation about this play, is Ian Shaw assuming the role of his father, Robert Shaw, because that's really what this play is about. And I wish it knew that that's what this play is really about. Because it's like we said earlier, this play is about Shaw really understanding his father and confronting his demons by playing his father, which that premise alone is incredible. But the problem is that, his withholdings and fear of being presumed as a prick for imitating his father really comes through. And it's like those moments where he's very vulnerable and you can tell that he's grappling with this stuff gets either overshadowed or undersold immediately after, very rapidly, by a joke that just doesn't really land. A weird trivia fact about Jaws that gets shoved in, or this little wink wink, do you get it moment. And that's really what weighs down the whole show. Is it's this battle of trying to figure out what the play actually is. I mean, it's really that thing of, when again are you going to have a son playing an iconic role that their parent originated that you're trying to understand? Like, when are you going to ever have that again? And I wish that it just went further with it. There were moments where it really got close, and I'm like, keep running with this, keep going down this path, but then we'd instantly divert to fun IMDb trivia about Jaws. And that's really what's pulling at this thing the whole way, is it this documentary about the making of Jaws? Is it a piece that's telling you timely information about the 70s? Or is it, Shaw, the son, playing Shaw, the father? And I think we all know which of those sounds the most appealing. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like the marketing has just really done it a disservice of it's hyped it up as it needs to be this big comedy, when in actuality, that's not at all what it is. Because I know, personally speaking, when I went into it, just with limited knowledge of what the show was, just going off of the videos that I'd seen and the promotional materials, it really makes it come off as it's like this laugh-a-minute comedy about everything that's going wrong with Jaws. It basically, for me, it portrayed it as like Jaws goes wrong, the play that goes wrong, when in actuality, it's more of a cat on a hot tin roof, where it has those funny bits, but it was nothing that really stuck with me, and the jokes didn't really hit the same way that something like Shucked would, because that's not, at the heart of it, that's not what this is. It is very much so a drama. It's the thing of like, yes, I do see how that could help get people into the door initially, but the problem with that is that then it basically feels like a bait and switch, no pun intended, where you come in expecting one thing, and I got something else that I wasn't exactly upset about, but it just wasn't what I came into the evening expecting. And so, that's great, you got me in, but now when I go to tell my friends about it, I'm going to say, well, it's not really what they hyped it up to be. It's pretty different, as opposed to if I went in with the expectation of knowing that it was going to be a little bit more dramatic. I think that would have just changed my perception of the show. This inevitably bleeds into the things that I didn't really like about the show, which really is that it's 90 minutes, there's no intermission, and yet somehow it feels really long. It's a bunch of scenes that don't really lead anywhere. And the way I told it to Howard as we were leaving the theater is, you could honestly cut out any one of those scenes and it wouldn't make a difference to the rest of the show. That doesn't include one very important part that, again, I wish they leaned heavier into this, where it's the famous USS Indianapolis monologue from the movie that basically is one of the most revered monologues in film history. Those scenes that it cuts away, it comes back, and it's really a character check-in on Robert Shaw as he's trying to write this monologue and perform this monologue. And it really gives you this great insight into the battles that he was having during this time. Those scenes are probably the most important part of the play, but the problem is that altogether they culminate to probably 5 minutes, probably 10, give it or take. And so then what happens is everything else around it just kind of feels forced, or like it's not really going anywhere. And so that's really all I have to say about The Shark is Broken. I will say that I did walk away a little disappointed that it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. But again, it's this weird thing of like, it is such a vulnerable piece that it's not fair for me to really judge it. And I don't really know how much credence my thoughts have, because what's really important is that it was written and that Shaw wrote it, that the son wrote it. So those are my thoughts on The Shark is Broken. What are your thoughts about Jaws? Comment below. Tell me your favorite Jaws moments. Remember to live truthfully in those imaginary circumstances. Chester lives, and Cleo sends her love.